It was over 40 years ago that a first-generation Italian, then a young teacher at Columbia University, started realizing his dream to start a college in Rutherford, New Jersey. The film you are about to see tells the story of the beginnings and rapid growth of the institution which became Fairleigh Dickinson University. It is a story unparalleled in American higher education. Starting as a junior college with 60 students, it grew into a 7-campus university with over 20,000 students in only 25 years. Many people contributed to that success, but the energy and vision that motivated the growth came from the founder, Dr. Peter Sammartino, and his wife, Sally. Now semi-retired and acting as University Chancellor and Dean Emeritus, respectively, the Sammartinos are still dynamic and active in many projects which continue to affect us on a local, state, national, and international level. But it is the story of Fairleigh Dickinson University that we are recounting here, as told by its central figures, Peter and Sally Sammartino.
I remember way back in 1933 when Peter was courting me at my home here at 220 Montrose Avenue in Rutherford, New Jersey. It was after the second dry martini that he looked across the street and said, with a glint in his eye, wouldn't it be wonderful to start a college in the old castle?
I was teaching at New College, an experimental college, Teachers College, Columbia University, and we wanted to set up a small practicum college for our majors in higher education.
Well, I remember you brought 3 faculty members over from New College, John Taylor, Paul Limbert, and Winifred Bain. And they were all intrigued with the idea of starting a college in Rutherford. Incidentally, they all became college presidents.
Yes, and in the mid-30s, the item for this new college, experimental college, was in the Columbia University budget. Then the second wave of the Depression came along and all new projects were out.
That was a disappointment, but very soon you began thinking about the idea again, and you brought 16 high school principals together.
Yes, and on December 3rd, 1941, your dad, Louis Scaramelli, hosted a dinner for these high school principals, and the vote was formally taken to found a college in Rutherford. 4 days later was Pearl Harbor Day. We had an emergency meeting the next day, and the vote to go ahead in spite of the war squeaked through by 1.
There we were with just a vote to establish a college. No money, no building. We did have the goodwill of the high school principals, however, and they had formed themselves into a board of educational directors. Then early in 1942, Colonel Fairleigh Dickinson, founder of Becton Dickinson and Company, came into the picture. Peter asked my father to approach the colonel about acquiring the castle, which was held by the Rutherford National Bank, of which the colonel was the president and my father a member of the board of directors.
Well, the colonel said, "Louis, I like that idea very much. Whatever you give, I'll match." Well, it was a war period, and Dad's importing business was not doing very well. He came to me, he said, "I can only afford to give $15,000. I said, "Well," thought a while, I said, "I'll match that, and then the colonel will have to match $30,000. And that made a total of $60,000, and that's how humbly Fairleigh Dickinson started. Of course, that took practically all of the cash I had. we formed a board of trustees. Edward T. Williams was chairman, Maxwell W. Beckton, Guy L. Hilleboe, Louis Scaramelli, and myself.
Well, up to now, we had not found a name for the college. We had thought of Rutherford Junior College, but with 16 high schools represented on our board, this seemed too localized. Then we came up with Boiling Springs. That was the original name of the area, you know. Only to find out there was another Boiling Springs College in South Carolina.
And it was about this time that I thought up the idea of honoring Colonel Dickinson. We applied to the State Board of Education for permission to establish Dickinson Junior College. This application was denied because there was a Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And at this point, I suggested using the Colonel's first name, Fairleigh. And that's how Fairleigh Dickinson came into being.
Fortunately, the Board of Educational Directors elected Peter the president, and I was appointed the Dean of Admissions. At no salary, of course. Peter didn't draw any salary for 3 years, and I for 14.
Yes, fortunately, I had royalties from my books. I sold a French newspaper which I had, the La Voix de France. I also cashed in my pension fund from college in New York, and that tided us over.
Well, finally, in September of 1942, we opened Fairleigh Dickinson Junior College with 59 girls and 1 boy. All the men had gone off to war. But we did have the good faith of the principals, and by the end of the war, our enrollment had increased, remember, to 250 students.
Yes, of course, in 1945, when the war ended, the veterans came to the college. Some people think that Fairleigh Dickinson developed because of the GI Bill. This is incorrect.
Actually, our greatest growth came in the early part of the 50s, when the veteran enrollment had almost ceased.
That's right. We grew because of 2 reasons. The first one was the pent-up demand for college education, and secondly, the expanding population in the northeastern part of New Jersey. Our growth was about 200 a year.
Naturally, with all this increase in enrollment, we needed new buildings. And the minute building restrictions were removed, we erected Beckton Hall and followed in rapid succession with a gymnasium, the classroom Hessline building, and finally the Messler Library.
The Hessline building we had to build ourselves with the students and with the faculty.
I remember that.
So we had a 4-year college with 4 schools by 1948, liberal arts, education, engineering, and business administration.
Our first expansion beyond Rutherford came in 1954, when we were asked to take over the assets, liabilities, and any qualified students of the bankrupt Bergen Junior College at Teaneck, just 6 miles north of our Rutherford campus.
The campus had been sadly neglected, both as to physical facilities and educational equipment. 14 members of our Rutherford faculty literally rolled up their sleeves to transform Bergen Junior College into the Teaneck campus of Fairleigh Dickinson University. All of this was not without some traumatic effect on some of the older students who resented the educational and disciplinary standards. It was at this time that I donned one of the suits of armor which I collected and appeared before them and said, "I expect some brickbats. I'm all set for you."
There was a burst of laughter and the ice was broken. We all became good friends, and the Bergen Junior College students became the Fairleigh Dickinson College undergraduates.
As soon as we had money for a building program, we began to erect buildings on the Teaneck campus. Since the old Bergen Junior College had no classroom building as such, our first project was for a classroom building, which we named Williams Hall. And then we had an interim library, which was soon given over to administration when this beautiful Wiener library with the Zorak mural was constructed. Robeson Hall began at this time, and other buildings began to dock the campus. University Hall, a Beckton Hall at the Teaneck campus, the two student union buildings, the dormitory, and the Muscarelli building, for which our friend Joe Muscarelli gave $1.5 million.
Graduate programs were introduced in 1954. And then our first professional school, the School of Dentistry, was opened in 1956 in Robeson Hall, and later moved across the river to a beautiful new building.
Yes, and this building was made possible by a $7 million grant by the government, and also a $2 million contribution by Dick Dickinson. And the program is accredited both for the Doctor of Dental Surgery and the Doctor of Dental Medicine.
Well, I might add here that we always gave top priority to accreditation, and happily, from the very beginning, we were able to meet all accreditation standards.
And now we come to the third campus of the university. This was the Twombly Estate. The trustees had fallen in love with the beauty of the landscaping, and looking forward to future expansion, decided to buy the Twombly Estate. I wasn't so sanguine about the timing because we had so many things to do in Teaneck and in Rutherford. But at any rate, in August of 1957, I asked 14 of my faculty members to meet me in Rutherford and then to follow me out to this place in their cars. We came up the beautiful driveway, and we finally came to the mansion, and pointing majestically to the building and to the landscape, I said, well, this place is ours. Now what in hell do we do with it?
Here we go again. As Dean of Admissions, I had delivered freshman classes and transfer students to 2 campuses and written the catalogs. And I wondered, when would the trustees expect me to deliver a freshman class to the Madison campus? The way we were going, it would not have surprised me if they had insisted on a September opening just a month away.
Well, actually, Sally didn't have to produce a class until September of 1958. In the meantime, I decided to have the June 1958 commencement at the Madison campus. The day was lovely and everything was beautiful. The flowers and the shrubs were in full bloom, but there was only one catch to the day. This was the year of the 17-year locusts. And the chirping of the locusts kept interfering with the sound system, and every once in a while there would be an unholy shriek from one of the ladies as a locust would drop from a tree into her lap.
I think it is important to point out that while we added facilities to the Madison campus, we always tried to retain the aesthetic beauty of the Twombly Estate. For instance, we retained the orangery while adding a compatible wing to the rear of the building. The spacious carriage house we remodeled to accommodate both a science laboratory and a health research laboratory.
And then shortly thereafter, one of our friends, Leonard Dreyfus, made it possible to erect the building for Dreyfus College. We had a dormitory named in honor of William A. Burden, and a student union building.
Let's not leave out the playhouse, built by the Twombleys.
Oh, yes.
The beautiful swimming pool still serves our students very well, but the luxurious indoor clay tennis courts with ivy climbing the walls 18 feet was too expensive for us to maintain. So we converted that to a gymnasium.
By 1958, we had 3 full campuses, duly established, and there were 4 schools: the liberal arts, engineering, business administration, and education.
After the dental school was opened in 1956, 8 years elapsed before you felt the need to press on. And this time, you had an idea that resulted in Edward Williams College. And Peter, the development of this idea was a very interesting one, and I think you should tell about it.
Well, as we were growing larger, we were losing some of the personal aspects that we enjoyed when we were a small college. I proposed to the Board of Trustees that we set up an experimental 2-year liberal arts college, and it was my idea that this unit would be followed by a 3-year unit leading directly to the Master of Arts degree. Through the generosity of Dick Dickinson, we were able to construct this building on the Hackensack side of the Teaneck campus, and I might say that aesthetically it is one of the most beautiful small college buildings I know of. Each classroom was furnished differently and in many cases served as an art gallery. The student body gathered together in semi-weekly meetings, and since many of the discussions concerned international affairs, I had an artist cover one whole wall of the theater with a map of the world. Wherever students gathered, art was displayed. Tickets for the opera, ballet, theater, and symphony were all included along with textbooks as part of the tuition, which I might add was less than what it was at the university.
To accommodate the 3-year program, funds were donated by our good friend Leonard Dreyfus. This completed the building needs for the 2+3-year experimental program. Just a year later, in 1965, we took a giant leap across the ocean and opened our first overseas campus at Roxton, England, which is just 75 miles northwest of London.
We acquired the 17th century Roxton Abbey from Trinity College.